By way of an introduction, my name is Kerry Harmer, and I'm the manager of the Makerspaces at the library at Mount Royal University. I'm also an immigrant from England, and in the spirit of reconciliation, I acknowledge the harm that has been done by my ancestors and the impact that continues today of colonialism. I've had the privilege of being a guest in many regions of this beautiful country, and today I live, work, play, love, and speak to you from the ancestral and traditional Indigenous territories of the Niitsitapi, that's the Blackfoot, and the people of the Treaty 7 region in southern Alberta. And this includes the Siksika, the Piikani, the Kainai, the Tsuut'ina, and the Îyârhe Nakoda First Nations. The city of Calgary is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3. As a grateful settler, I acknowledge that treaty relations have not been honored, and I work daily to restore good relations. And I invite you to join me in that work because we are all treaty people. We are thrilled today to welcome you all to join us in a conversation with Neeraj Gupta. Niraj will be sharing his expertise on AI, ML, IoT, and the evolution of emerging technologies in the Alberta landscape and what that means within Canada. Niraj is the Chief Strategy Officer and the advisor to the CEO at Attabotics, one of the most successful 3D robotics supply chain companies headquartered in Calgary, Alberta. He is the expert on AI, ML, and IoT, which he's going to explain what those mean to us, product and innovation management, strategy and international business expansion, and patent consulting. He also advises Invest Alberta on technology and innovation investments. Neeraj holds a Bachelor of Technology degree from the Indian Institute of Technology, that's the IIT, in Metallurgical and Material Sciences, and a Master's of Science degree from the Royal Institute of Technology in Sweden in Scientific Computing and Mathematics. He also holds a PGPX in General Management from the UCLA Anderson School of Management. He is the author of the book, Creating and Safeguarding a Strong Intellectual Property Portfolio, which was written in collaboration with SIDBI, Adelphi, and the KfW Bank in Germany. He sits on the boards of the Calgary Chambers, Immigrant Services Calgary, KTH Alumni, SIBC, and Alberta IoT. He's also invested in several startups across the globe. So we're very excited to welcome Neeraj to our conversation today.
Thanks, Kerry.
So we're going to start the conversation, as I mentioned earlier. Some of the folk in the room here might not really be familiar with some of those terms. So artificial intelligence, machine learning, and the Internet of Things. I wonder if you could define those for us to get us started.
Yeah. So when you start looking at artificial intelligence, it leverages computer and machines to mimic the problem solving and decision making capabilities of a human mind. That's the simplest definition, so it's a science, it's mathematics, it's an engineering of making intelligent machines, especially intelligent computer programs, right? So that's what AI stands for. What you do with the machine learning is when you have aggregation of the data, you start doing a lot of algorithms to help them machine learn using those data which you may gather through different kind of a sensor devices or different kind of a data mechanisms through which you will have plenty of data. And that's when you start making your models more aware about that particular domain or that particular area and start machine learning your algorithms to become more intelligent. What IoT does is IoT is nothing but Internet of Things, but in a simplest form, it's a way to assign a specific ID through which you could collect a lot of data using sensor mechanisms. So that's the cusp. All these technologies are not new; they have been there for last 3 or 4 decades. The important aspect of AI, machine learning, and IoT is becoming very interesting because IoT is generally a source of data many times, and that data could be machine learned to make your models much more intelligent, using which you can make your machines more intelligent, and probably a lot of work that otherwise a normal human mind cannot do could be done using these decision-making capabilities and problem-solving techniques of AI algorithms and machine learning algorithms, and that's why it's becoming very interesting. If you look at overall, what's happening, in last 3 or 4 decades, 1980s to 2010 was more about creating more and more um, technology and research. So there was a lot of research happening. There was a lot of technical innovations happening. But since 2005-10, a lot of new companies started coming in. Look at the digital transformation, because of which e-commerce came up, payments, digital payments came up, fintech evolution came up. And there was this cusp of domain and these technologies. All of a sudden, everybody started looking at what could be the applied side of these research that's happening. And that's where last like 7 8 years you're seeing this huge growth of AI, machine learning, and IoT in terms of implementation in different companies and different research projects.
Niraj, where are we seeing this in our daily lives now? Because as you say, it's now being applied. Where are we seeing this? Where is this existing in our worlds that we can
Every
understand?
Everywhere. The watch which I am wearing has all the sensors to get all kind of a data, be it ESG, be it my body temperature, be it my heartbeat. All this data goes into the kind of cloud where, let's assume I'm using Apple Watch example. They do all the calculation at the cloud, and on at the edge also a lot of compute is happening, based on which they give me the data that, oh, you know what, it's a time for you to walk, or it's a time for you to breathe more, or it's a time for you to eat. So this data, when you look at the B2B and B2C sector, so look at the B2C sector where all these clients, when you have a better decision mechanism. For example, when you used to spend a lot of money, there were two Harvard graduates who come out with the idea that, whatever spend you are doing using your credit cards and all you need to do is register your credit card. They will keep analyzing, and after that they used to use those machine learning algorithms in order to tell you that, you know what, you have spent this much amount of money in last 1 week, you could have saved this much amount of money by using these, not Uber, but some other way of transportation, or buying from different grocery shops and stuff like that. So what they're doing is rather than just saying that how can you save money, they're using traditional data and then telling you how you could save money. So there are multiple ways of companies coming out with this, individuals' decision-making capabilities becoming better. When you look at a B2B, a lot of businesses are, nowadays using a lot of data. And I always say that companies don't have a problem of not having enough data. The problem is there's a lot of data they have. They do not know how to data bucket it and how to make use of that data, the realization of that data. So the moment companies start looking at all that data, they start thinking about how can they make use of data to make their system or solution much more advanced and intelligent, to either save money within the process or give more value addition to their clients. One such sector is healthcare. Nowadays, or take the example of fintech. There was a time when you had to take a loan, and that loan process used to take like 2 to 3 weeks. Right now, you apply online. They have all the data. They do all the probabilistic, calculations to find out what's the risk in giving you the loan, and accordingly they set the interest rate and give it to you in a matter of minutes. Actually, that all is being used using data models, analytics, and AI machine learning.
Thank you. You talked about digital transformation. I'm wondering, where do you see the future of these technologies evolving to? We're hearing a lot about fintech and some of the other areas. What's leading the way in this?
So the first and foremost thing is most of the companies have started digitally transforming themselves, and we have to give the credits to the government, provincial and federal, which are giving enough incentives for these companies to become digitally transformed using data. Data is the beginning of any kind of further discussion in terms of how you could use these algorithms and how you could use these technologies. Once you have that, the good thing that is happening with these companies are that they are becoming more and more aware about how they could do the data analytics and data science. They are engaging with the kind of infrastructure and the kind of institution that are coming up within Canada and North America. For example, if you look at Canada, you have three topmost AI machine learning institutes: Mila in Quebec, Vector Institute in Toronto, and AMI in Edmonton. AMI is among top five machine learning institutes in the world, actually. And then you have University of Alberta, University of Calgary, um, uh, you know, different kind of institutions which are coming up. Now, what happens with that is that you have, when you look at, AI, machine learning, and IoT, there are four important pillars you need to understand: data, domain, talent, and research. You need data. So digital transformation is the key, because if you are not digitally transformed, you cannot have a data. Second is domain. When all these companies have so much massive amount of business acumen, which they have started implementing using that data, which otherwise was with all the senior partners and the experience used to take into, like, that's why, service industry, you have these different kind of a brackets. Senior partner will have $1,000 an hour and junior partners will have $800, because they are much more having experience in those domains. But now you have these AI machine learning algorithms which can kind of emulate you as a senior partner, right? So domain is extremely important, because unless you don't understand what could be the domain, you will not be able to create applied models. Then the third one is talent. And talent is something which is the matter of worry right now, frankly telling you, because we don't have enough talent. The kind of demand which we have in Alberta, in Canada, in North America, we don't have even 10% of the people who probably are required. So that's where a lot of post-secondary institutions have started looking into how they could reskill the experts, or the fresh graduates are very much interested to get into these kind of technology. And fourth is research. Traditionally, if you look at the businesses, companies and all, they do not want to do that fundamental research, the AI research. And that's where institutions like yours and AMI and Mila, all these organizations are ready to do those kind of fundamental research. And then the companies could use the data to come out with a better model.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Thank you. You talk quite a bit about talent, and it is a conversation that seems to come up quite frequently in the Emerging Technology Consortium events that we have too. With regards to reskilling, are there opportunities for students to engage in that kind of skill development at this point in time, or is that still something that's emerging as well?
Um, so when you start looking at the reskilling part of it, I feel that right now the good thing is that a lot of post-secondaries have started looking into the kind of infrastructure that is needed, because you need to educate these experts who have been otherwise in oil and gas industry or mechanical industries and different kind of industries. So the proper curriculum is required, and then along with that proper curriculum, there needs to be a kind of internship where all these experts could actually implement, apply before getting into the real world, even if they have had experience in the past, but in a different industry and domain. So I feel that reskilling part of it is something wherein still a lot of post-secondaries and a lot of other institutions and even private institutions have started looking into how they could, create better curriculum. So organizations like yours, I know that you have been trying to reskill a lot of people, but think about companies like AltaML in Calgary and Edmonton. So AltaML is a good AI machine learning service company, and they have created this program along with, I think, Calgary, city of Calgary, where they are training 100 plus, experts who basically want to be reskilled. So that's the kind of a thing that's happening. I'm very happy about one fact that now in the post secondaries, when you are going to do a bachelor's degree or master's degree, there's a good amount of AI machine learning that is embedded. So the student, when he or she goes through like 4 years or 2 years of that curriculum, they already are becoming much more aware about it, and then there are multiple avenues and ways through which they have started interacting. And there's a lot of data sets and data models which are open data models. I'm part of one nonprofit called Global Partnership on AI, GPA. This was started by French government and Canadian government, and now I think the more than 27 countries are part of it. And they're looking at how can they create and build the data models, which could be much more open for people to make use of.
Mm-hmm.
But that's another problem. Data is gold. People don't want to share it. But in order to reskill or in order to train these students, they need to have those kind of models available so that they could make use of that to kind of have be a better in terms of skill sets in AI machine learning. When you look at IoT, you need to have a certain understanding of electronics and telecommunication and sensors and all. So that becomes much more difficult for anybody who doesn't have the experience into that to get into. So that's something where you need to have primarily a degree.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at AI, machine learning, analytics, data science, it still is tough but achievable.
Right. Thank you. I wonder if we could talk a little bit about your position as a chief strategy officer and advisor to the CEO at Attabotics. Attabotics has many accolades, as we've mentioned in the invitation to this event. I wonder if you could share the story of Attabotics with us.
For sure. I'm very proud of Attabotics because of multiple reasons. The primus thing is technology. I love technology, and Attabotics has a very high and deep technology, but also about the fact that we are very much Canadian company based out of Alberta. And we generally, if you look at the company of size of Attabotics, they tend to become American company or European company based on where they get funded. But we still are very Canadian company, and we plan to remain so. So that's another matter of pride for us. So Attabotics, for people who do not know, is a 3D high density robotics warehousing and fulfillment automation solution. So what we do is you will see a lot of traditional fulfillment centers of different companies, e-commerce companies and retail companies and e-grocery companies. Traditionally, they have these fulfillment centers which are otherwise outside the cities because of the requirement of the real estate. What we did was we created a very good solution in a technology which helps you with 85% space reduction in the warehouse, 75% labor reduction, and 50% capex reduction by using our solution. That's huge because if you could shrink the entire warehouse operations to 15%, which means you can do a lot of work with remaining 85%, whatever you want to do. And then 75% labor reduction also means that you could utilize your labor for some other work and you could be more efficient. And the capex cost, 50%, is huge for all these robotics companies, fulfillment centers, because the cost of supply chain is very high. What we have enabled is something which essentially transforms the entire fulfillment center. But using our technology, what we were able to also achieve is, look at a lot of large companies, e-com companies, which are claiming like same day delivery and next day delivery. And why they're able to do it is because of sheer number of orders they get. But if you're a small company, it's difficult for you to set up a fulfillment automation center, which could do a same day or next day delivery. With our technology, because we could reduce your space to 15%, we could have a multiple micro nodes within that city without spending a lot of money and connect those nodes in order to create a network of supply chain and could do and compete with large companies. So we are not just transforming the large organizations which have money to transform from the capex standpoint and asset heavy standpoint, but also these mid-size and small scale of companies which have a very huge problem in supply chain. Now, it started in 2017, but the founder Scott started looking at this idea since 2014 and started working on it. He was the primary inventor of this technology, but slowly he started bringing in like-minded people, and then from that technology, we were able to create a product. And there's always this evolution of technology, product, and solution. I always say technology is something which you invent and do a lot of R&D. Product is something where you start looking at specific area where you could have understanding of what should be the market, what should be your price point, what kind of a solution and the companies will buy, what is their requirement. So that's where you start taking the product shape. as a company. But from the product, you start looking at multiple areas. Like, for example, we work with e-grocery. They have a very different kind of a requirement because of the perishable items they have versus, retail, electronics, retail, fulfillment automation, to a different kind of a business innovations like network supply chain, which I told you about. So these are the solutions. So from a tech product in last 5 years, we have transformed ourselves to a very high end product, to multiple solutions which are catering to different countries. And in the process, we have grown to 350 odd people, have multiple offices now in North America. I always like the companies like Attabotics, why they are gold mines are because they have a three-dimensional growth. So one side, on x-axis, y-axis, you can keep growing as technology. We have so much to do in tech. While we are very deep tech, we have a very strong IP portfolio globally. We still can keep growing in terms of technology. And then the another axis, we could keep growing as a solution. So we are right now doing e-grocery or domain centric. We could start doing new business models like network supply chain. So we could grow as a business domain and the solutions. And the third axis, z axis, is something which we can keep growing across the globe. We are predominantly very North American operations, but we have started growing in Asia and Europe. We have started looking into. So, we have a possibility and opportunity to become a multi-billion dollar, Canadian organization. The credit goes to also the excellent team. We have excellent set of people with very good understanding about the technology and solution and business. And that's why a lot of big organizations have partnered with us globally. And we are doing a lot of joint, PR and joint solution offering.
Can you share some of those partners that you're partnering with?
No, we have partnered with a lot of organizations. You might have seen, we have partners like Microsoft and Accenture, and there are different other partners who are there. And so we have tech. So again, the tech partner, when you start talking about partnership for any startup, I'm not sure if there are entrepreneurs here, you have tech partnerships, like organizations like Amy or LTML are the perfect partners for us in AI machine learning, for example. And we have similar partners in different domains from different tech standpoint. Post-secondaries are organizations which are working with us on the tech innovations. Then you have a business partnerships. And then on the top of it, you have these partners who are helping us grow in different kind of countries. So they are consulting partners for us. So we have all sort of partners. And that's why, very important thing for any startup which are of our size is focus. There will be 10,000 ways of growing, but you cannot, because you have only 350 odd employees, and we probably will double in next 1 year, who knows. But the point is, if we want to grow, we also need to have a focus. So while we know that there are multiple opportunities and we have multiple partners who potentially want to work with us, we are very focused in terms of what's our big win and quick win and long-term win, and what's their quick win and long-term win. So whenever you're doing any partnership, remember, it's not just what's your win. You need to understand other parties' motivation and align yourself.
Thank you. You talked a little bit about provincial and federal government. I wonder, as as a Calgary business, how has Calgary facilitated the success of Attabotics, and how has their success impacted Calgary and Calgary's technology sector?
I always, tell to a lot of companies which are trying to become Canadian company or Calgary-based company that, you need to also look into your ecosystem. You look at Calgary, in last 3 or 4 years, you have multiple incubators like Platform Calgary, like, CDL, Zone Startup. There are so many other organizations which are supporting in different domains. Then you have multiple angel funds which are coming in. You look at organizations like Startup TNT or Valhalla Angels. They're doing great in terms of supporting the pre-seed stage organization. You have multiple funds coming in, anywhere between $20 million to $100 million. You have a lot of expats, Canadians who were in US otherwise have started coming back. Apart from that, a very important aspect which has happened in last couple of years is provincial and federal governments have started providing a lot of support to the tech sector, to these startups and scale ups. Look at what CED is doing, what Invest Alberta is doing in Edmonton, what Edmonton Global is doing. You have these ecosystems of AMI, Health City, Bio Alberta, Genome Alberta, right? And then you have these great mechanisms to get funding, grants, non-dilutive grant. Non-dilutive grant is pretty huge. Federally, you look at Strategic Innovation Fund, look at Sustainable Development Technology Canada, SDTC, look at so many, Scale AI, which is in, if you have any idea in AI, machine learning, and supply chain, you get a lot of support from them. So you have a lot of these federal, kind of grants, and then you have a lot of provincial grants. Even funds like Opportunity Calgary Investment Fund, and there are so many other non-dilutive grants which have come in. So when you start looking, Alberta Innovates provides such a great support to all the companies which are trying to build IP, build tech, and then grow further. And a lot of these grants are non-dilutive. So what's happening is that all of a sudden I am seeing this perfect ecosystem and positive chaos that's happening in Calgary. You need that. You need to have that ecosystem and you need to have that chaos. Now, companies like us have got tremendous amount of help from City of Calgary, Alberta government, and federal government. So we are very thankful because of that support. Also, we were able to retain ourselves in Calgary. However, now the bigger challenge for the government is gonna be, now there are companies. Look at what Siemens, Benevity, Neo, Jobber, Attabotics, and companies like us have done. And we have grown during pandemic. You have to remember that. But now we are growing to the stage where you need we have different kind of requirements from the support standpoint, from the investment standpoint, from the market standpoint. So while we have done a lot of business in US, now we have started looking into how we could tap our Canadian companies and transform them from supply chain standpoint. So I think now the biggest challenge federal and provincial governments and city are going to have and faces is how can they transform and start understanding the problem statements of tech companies like us, which are no longer startup but scale ups. It's a
Yeah.
very different business, though we traditionally have that kind of a mindset, because why Alberta is very strong, because we always were entrepreneurs. Look at oil and gas, when what has happened, AI, machine learning, IoT, one of the biggest areas is oil and gas, energy, and that's what is happening. So we were entrepreneurs traditionally. We have a proper infrastructure. We just have to start also understanding these specific tech sectors and how we could help them, not only in terms of the initial growth, but during the scale up phase.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. What are the growth opportunities in the Alberta landscape? And what are some of the challenges that we might be facing? I think you mentioned it with those kind of growth opportunity, the scale up challenges. But are there any other growth opportunities that you're seeing, or any other challenges?
Several, talent being one. We discussed about it, right? We now have to rely more and more on the post secondaries, and they need to be supported by the government. They need to also, like, they always get support, but they need to be supported more and more so that they could become the hub of the talent, reskilling, or the freshers, all these people, their capacity has to be increased and supported. Second is infrastructure. Again, the challenge I see is infrastructure. Look at IoT and hardware. Why companies used to go to China was because of the cost difference, right? The quality had issues. If you look at what we have done from Attabotics standpoint, we did our own automation. So a lot of people do ask, why are you not going to China when you're growing and do a lot of manufacturing over there? You know what? We already are 90% efficient. So China is not going to change our entire landscape in terms of cost saving or quality. We are better off in Alberta, in Calgary. But if you look at the small company, and they are a hardware company, for example, or IoT company, they do not have infrastructure at times wherein they could get these prototype and beta, because it costs a lot. If we can have a proper infrastructure, a kind of a network of labs where you could go and develop these things. That is helpful. You need to have data centers. You need to have a compute, especially in the context of AI machine learning. Computing is the biggest problem. And if you want to have a proper compute, you need, and these devices are damn costly. So you need to have computational centers where these companies could make use of those infrastructure. So infrastructure is another bigger challenge, which I feel has to be taken care of somehow. That's the second one. And the third one is more visibility. When you look at the startups and scale ups coming over in Alberta, we need to promote it. At times it pains me when I tell people, oh, I'm in Alberta, and they're like, what are you doing in Alberta? And I am fed up of this question.
Yeah.
If I was an oil and gas guy, and if I would have told to another oil and gas that I'm in Alberta, nobody would have asked this question. They're like, oh, you're in Alberta, wow, perfect. If you're in Houston or in Calgary, they won't ask you. But if
Yeah.
I'm a tech guy, people are asking this question. So I think we as Calgary and Alberta have to start doing PR around our ecosystem in tech. We need to promote our startups. We need to promote our people. So that's another mindset change that is required.
Mhm. That makes a lot of sense. What do you think students need to know who are interested in pursuing careers in any of these areas?
So if you look at the business students versus tech students, okay, so and law graduates also, and a lot of other people, but let's assume about the tech people. My suggestion is start exploring right now. Gone are the days when they wanted you to first of all come out of the university and then start applying for the jobs. There are internships opportunities. They want to work with you, they want to collaborate with you, and you know what will happen with that you will get the kind of understanding of what's happening in the industry, because then that term called finishing school is no longer required. And this finishing school is a bigger challenge I see when the students go through the entire 4 or 3 or 2 years of education, and then all of a sudden they are in the company and they do not have an idea. And while they're doing great technologically, they probably are not able to overall understand what's happening. A lot of flat organizations have better way of growing and growth, but a lot of companies which have multiple hierarchy, it becomes difficult for these students to learn the business side of it and the solution side of it, right? So one important aspect of all the students are, if you are looking into these kind of domains, understand the technology and business both. You need to understand what is business, you need to understand what is supply chain. So don't just apply at Attabotics saying, oh, it's a robotics company. Understand what supply chain all about, and there's so much of a data online you can read. For the business guys, it's extremely important to start understanding a bit of a tech. That doesn't mean they have to code, but they need to understand what's happening in the tech and how tech is transforming the businesses. So if you are MBA graduates and you are going into being part of any organization, be it a business development or marketing, you need to understand how tech is transforming, right? And that's extremely important part of it. So to these students, my suggestion will be understand the business side of it, and a bit of understanding of AI machine learning without going deep inside will definitely help you.
Yeah.
Uh, every company is transforming, and it's important for us to also understand how this transformation will happen. I'll give you a very simple example. In India, there's this multi-billion-dollar startup called Flipkart. They were acquired in, I think, $19 billion by Walmart in India. E-commerce company, very similar to other e-com companies. What Flipkart has done is has not only transformed itself to become this multi-billion-dollar startup, but around Flipkart there are thousands of companies that have come around. So I have this philosophy which I share with everybody. I have this concept of unicorns, soonicorns, and bornicons. So you need a lot of unicorns to become a role model. Around that unicorns, you'll have soon to be unicorns startups where they will start thinking about the problems. They would know that how to become bigger in terms of scale ups and all. And with this balance, you will start having a lot of bornicons, and bornicons mean born to be unicorns because they already will have the ideas on where is the gap. Right now, if you look at Alberta, because of Neo Financial and Attabotics and Jobber and Benevity, already people are already thinking that how could they become relevant from these startup standpoint, which are becoming large, and how could they become more relevant from one vertical standpoint. Look at Clio. Clio is a legal tech platform, multi-billion dollar legal tech company in last 3 years. Now around Clio, there are multiple legal tech concepts that are coming in. So if a student will start being aware about everything, then if they want to become entrepreneur or better business people, it will be easier for them. So understand the industry part of it. It's very important.
Yeah. That's great advice, Neeraj, for our students in the group. I know that it's not just students in the room here with us today. I'm wondering if anybody has any questions for Neeraj. So I've been asking lots of questions. I want to turn it over now to the folk who have joined us today. Feel free to unmute. We're not a huge group today, so feel free to unmute and ask your question or to pop it into the chat. Hi, Melanie.
Hi there. Hi, Niraj. How are you?
I'm good, Melanie.
Yes, you do have some entrepreneurs here today. So I was just curious if you could tell me a little bit about the connection you see vis-a-vis e-grocery and the suppliers like Attabotics, as well in terms of the analytics, specifically around price analytics and any insights you might have for a group like us.
For sure, I think look at if you look at Attabotics, e-grocery is a very important vertical for us. E-grocery is transforming, and that's why fulfillment automation is being done by a lot of big corporates and companies, and that's where Attabotics comes into the picture. But that's when you start looking at Attabotics. Until last year, we were just a box. In a way, we were automating the entire fulfillment centers, but beyond that, it was the responsibility of the retailer to take care of the rest of the stuff. But with a lot of network supply chain, same day delivery, 2 hours delivery kind of a concepts, Attabotics is also transforming itself from micro fulfillment standpoint, which a lot of other companies like us are also trying to do. But we are better because of our fundamental technology and product. Now, for us, it's very important to help the brands and the retailer both in whatever ways their objectives are in terms of a supply chain, cost, efficiency, predictions. So when you start looking at companies like yours, where there's a price analytics, there is a different kind of analytics, that's extremely important for companies like us. Because we are working with a lot of consulting organizations, we are working with a lot of e-grocery companies and brands, and they need a value add. They are not just they are happy with what we are doing, and most of the time what I have seen is once they are used to of our technology, they're like, what's more? And that's where organizations like yours come into picture. And since Attabotics have become scale up, we work with a lot of startups. We have started working with startups to jointly do some solutioning which could become a value add for our clients, and in the process companies and these startups become successful. We don't have a corporate venturing program. We probably, once we'll be a multi-billion-dollar fund, we will start doing it, but we provide all the support to work with these startups. And you need to understand, we are also a startup, right? So we will rely more on you in terms of how you could understand what we are doing and do further application part of it with our solution. So yeah, always open to work with you. If you look at a lot of organizations like Microsoft, Accenture, so many other organizations, they all have started looking into corporate venturing programs. What they do is organizations like yours, they will start working with you. They will start creating a kind of a joint solution, or your solution they'll expose to the data and their clients. And once they will start seeing that you are making an impact, they will invest in you, they will support you, you will become their portfolio company.
Thank you very much, Niraj. Looking forward to future conversations with you. Take care.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Melanie, I'm curious about your business. Would you like to add a little context for us?
Certainly. My company, I'm the founder and CEO of Better Cart Analytics, And we are a big data company that takes all of the online grocery pricing data available and distills it to retailers and manufacturers for the benefit of improving their price image, their operating profit, and their customer and brand loyalty. So we're very interested in establishing partnerships with corporations and being those suppliers of that extra value. So looking forward to exploring linkages with Niraj's, Attabotics and other companies of a similar vein.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments that people would like to share?
So my question is, I guess we're in the domain area because we're environmental science. We have lots of students, and quite commonly the response when you try and introduce them to them is that we're environmental science students. We're not computer science students. How do we convince them that if you're not aware of this stuff, you're not environment science students either? It's sort of like I haven't seen how you inspire somebody who doesn't think computers is or this level of automation is part of their world.
Niraj, you're muted.
I'm sorry. I'm not an environmental science engineer, but because of my previous backgrounds and all, I have a bit of an idea. And when you start looking at environmental science, there's so much of AI machine learning is happening. Like if you look at recycle e-waste, agricultural sustainability, species protection, cleaner air, renewable energy, water conservation, so much work is happening where it's a perfect combination of IoT sensor devices and AI machine learning. And especially if you start looking at what's happening with Alberta and Canada, we want to become pioneers in ESG, environment, social, and governance. So every company, right now, there are large corporates which have started looking at E part of it, environment part of it, but now more and more scale-ups and mid-sized companies have also tried understanding what should we do from environmental science standpoint so that we could have a better ESG score. So I feel that my suggestion to you, Professor Tim, will be that if you could have a couple of case studies, and I'll be more than happy to kind of provide you a couple of links where these people will be able to see what's happening, how it is being transformed using all these technologies which are being used in water, in environmental side of it, pollution control, e-waste management. Because the moment they start looking at those aspects, they get excited. The business side of it, what I have seen is these students, many times your students, I'm not sure what's the mix, but let's assume you have students who are researchers versus students who are for the job. So students who are looking for the job will always look at, okay, are there opportunities in tech? Do we have enough companies where I should, as a student, should have these technology understanding as well so that I could give a better interview? And researchers always want to look at how should they collaborate with cross-domain, cross-functional experts so that they could create a very different kind of impact, right? So I feel that fundamentally, if the best possible way to do this is let's create a couple of case studies, show it to them, and slowly that's a mindset change that's required.
Thanks. That has a good resonance. We do case studies for other things, so why not do it for success in this area? That's a good idea. Thanks.
Absolutely. Hi, Stephen.
Hi, Niraj. Great to see you. I'm Stephen. I'm CTO at BetterCart as well. So excuse me for monopolizing you, but I just wanted to ask a little bit about provisional patent applications and reading on that. I know you've mentioned before provisional patent applications being a good route to go, that are a low cost option for startups who want to create some intellectual property. Do you have any particular reading or places that you would recommend going to learn a bit more about PPAs?
For sure. For the general audience, provisional patent application is a kind of a mechanism wherein, let's assume you are working on an idea. Even if you're a researcher, the problem is, even if you're a researcher, a student, or an entrepreneur, you cannot go in public without filing a patent. That's the first condition, right? But researchers want to publish it before IEEE or different kind of areas. Students want to showcase their research, and entrepreneurs want to talk to investors and potential partners. And probably they are still like 8 months or 9 months behind the overall product or the research. What do you do with that? So there's something called provisional patent application, wherein you can kind of include every possible document or the idea which you are working on related to that invention, even if you have not completed that product. So let's assume you know there are 3 or 4 ways of solving a problem. Dump all the information in that document. Write it just like you're writing IEEE documentation. You don't need to make a lot of changes, right? And then slowly, you could hire any patent attorney, or otherwise there are, like, if you talk to, I'm not sure where are you based, but if you're based out of Alberta, Alberta Innovates has something called micro vouchers. And micro vouchers you can apply, and they give you $10,000. And a part you have to give, but a part they give it to you, and they also help you file the patent. So they have experts who will work with you. You don't need to spend $10,000, frankly. You could just do it in $1,000, because provisional, while there is a particular format, it's not very tricky because you're not drafting a highly complicated set of claims. Okay, so, and you file it before US or Canada. Canada, it's called incomplete application. In US, it's called provisional patent application, where you are dumping everything without thinking about what exactly will come out of it. Once you have filed a provisional patent, you have to file it only in one country, and you get the provisional date in more than 140 countries. Generally, you have to file patents in every country, which is costly affair. But the moment you file it in one country, you have a patent pending status and applicability in more than 140 countries. And then you go start talking to people. If you're a researcher, start presenting wherever you want to. And within 1 year, when you're in, and it's cost effective. And then within 1 year, when your invention is almost ready, you convert it into actual patent, which is called non-provisional patent application, the actual patent. And you can go to Europe, you can go to India, US, everywhere, show that provisional. I mean, your attorney will take that provisional copy, and your patent will be predated to the date when you had filed your provisional patent application. And from one provisional, you can file even 100 patents. So if you had 4 or 5 areas that you were working on, and you could champion in 2 areas, from the same provisional, you can file 2 patents or 10 patents. You'll be surprised that top 500 companies in the world, on an average, file 10 provisionals per day. Because if you're not able to convert it into non-provisional, all you lose is a date. It's never published. So nobody comes to know about it.
And are there any good books or websites that are good to learn about this? Or
there are a lot of YouTube links. I'm more than happy. Probably, Kerry, you can share my email address, and I'll be more than happy to specifically send the links to anybody who wants it.
Thanks, Neeraj. I'll get in touch about that. I appreciate that. Great summary.
No problem. Yeah. Lucas has a question.
Niraj, I just want to, are you okay with me putting your email address into the chat?
Absolutely, that's fine.
And you can see Lucas's question?
Yeah, I'm going through it.
Great, thank you.
A very good question. Startups always, and you should talk to Melanie more about it. She probably, when you're a startup, you need all sort of support. The biggest challenge for you is you probably may not have the kind of money which you otherwise will have to spend in order to onboard a lot of talent. So if you could, and traditionally I have seen that a lot of post-secondaries have this technology transfer office. The problem with the technology transfer offices is there's IP, you have to take the license, and there's a lot of complications around it. But now I'm seeing more and more post-secondaries coming out with the startup cell. Again, the challenge is they only support their own university level startups, professors and researchers coming out of those startups. External startups, if you could look into organizations like Melanie's organization and other organizations, and start talking to them. They would love to work with you and the professors and the researchers, because professors have so much knowledge. They want to publish certain things, but if there can be an arrangement wherein the startups could retain the IP and professors could do the research, that's a perfect win. And in the process, students will start working with the companies and startups and gain that kind of a knowledge and experience. And in the government of Alberta gives a lot of incentives if you're hiring students. So you could always get the support to partially reimburse a bit of a cost of these students as well. And who knows, like if startup grows, I think the best possible place where these students will get placed are these startups. We work with a lot of post-secondaries, and we hire a lot of students. So, my suggestion is, if you as a career service at MRU can create a specific group, a sort of a place where you startups could talk to you directly and start engaging with these students, I think you're going to get at least 50 companies in next 2 weeks. The moment you will promote yourself, because there's so many good startups which want help. And the problem is, post-secondaries are such a huge organization, they also do not know whom to talk. So you need to become a central node, because I might be a AI company, somebody might be environmental and IoT company, so they do not know whom to talk. Every division is different. Post-secondaries are large organizations, large institutions. So if you can become that central node to interact, I think more than 70% of your students will start working with these startups and start helping them.
Thanks for that answer, Niraj. It kind of got me thinking, so I have a little bit of a related question. I know something that comes up when I'm speaking with students fairly often is, they're looking for connections in industry or connections with possible mentors and things like that. I wonder if you have any advice for students on kind of the student side. We talked a little bit about the university side, but on their side, what they could do to start forming those relationships.
They should start joining a lot of these special interest groups. So in Alberta, there's something called Rainforest Alberta. You might have heard of. Jim Gibson started that. It's a great place. Just go and sign up yourself, and then there are nowadays there's online meetings that happens every Wednesday, 12 to 1 or 12 to 2. But earlier we used to meet in person, and it's a very informal group. And nobody judges you. You don't need to be an entrepreneur all the time. So even if you're a student, you go over there and you will be surprised to meet so many people. So there are a lot of these special interest groups and events keep happening. Students have to come out of their shell. They have to start meeting these people. And, in the process, you will find right kind of mentors. Ask Melanie. She probably mentors a lot of students because she has so much of a knowledge, and we love to give back to the society, right? So you have to push them to become part of these organizations. Like I absolutely like and love the Rainforest Alberta and what they have done, because they're not just a group of entrepreneurs. You will find 70% of the mix who are people who are working in different organizations and students who want to contribute, and that's where this matchmaking happens.
Okay, that's great. Thank you so much. We have a question in the chat here from Diana. So she says, hello, thank you so much for an interesting chat. I work for the Institute for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at MRU, and we provide I&E programming for students. If you were to build a student training program for AI, ML, what would you ideally want to see to support creating the most competitive and informed students?
So Ray DePaul is on the board of Attabotics, and he's a very dear friend. So Diana, very important part is, if you want to build these kind of AI machine learning programs, and since you only mentioned about AI machine learning, what you need to do is you need to look into a domain. So for example, robotics or AR, VR or healthcare. Get 5 companies which can provide some kind of insights around what's their requirement from the student standpoint. The good thing is when any fresh student comes out of the university, we don't have a lot of expectations, but we still have to work for 3 to 4 months on that particular student before they become totally part of companies like Attabotics. So if you look at robotics and you say, okay, I'm going to choose 5 companies, or fintech for that matter, where you could have Neo Financial and a couple of other organizations, Siemens and all, and say, okay, tell us what's your problem statement. If you're gonna hire these students, what exactly you would be looking into it. That insight, if you can convert it into the program, that will be perfect, because most of the times those insights are very generic, right? Because you don't expect a lot of deep tech contribution in terms of the business from the fresher or recently graduated students. So, you will get the generic idea about what exactly are the requirements. Like Attabotics can tell you 5 things which we require or which we always look for in a student who has recently graduated. And that industry understanding of that need, and then AI machine learning program will be better for you, right? Because you can go through thousands of AI machine learning programs online. There are dime a dozen AI machine learning programs nowadays. Some are very good as well. But what's missing is very industry specific. So if you could create, like, let's assume 30 students, critical number of 50 students, and these 5 organizations which can provide you the information and probably can also give the opportunity to these students to interact once or twice during that program, that I think will help you evolve, and then further you could kind of build a better program. Just my thought process. I'm sure that a lot of other people may have different ideas, but I feel that something which is missing in all these programs is connect to the industry.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I really value your insight.
Yeah, and happy to contribute as Attabotics if you guys are doing anything.
Fantastic. Thank you.
We just have 1 minute left before our time is up with Neeraj. So I wanted to just thank everybody for their questions. Thank you, Neeraj, so much for being so generous with your knowledge with us today and sharing, and also for sharing your email address so that people can continue the conversation with you and ask some of those specific questions.